Okay, let's go ahead and get started with today's webinar. This is part of the CFO community series. Today's topic is Up Your CFO Game with Data Visualization Tools. We have three great speakers today and a really interesting topic. Some concepts, some real world examples, and application. I'm Tom Wadelton. I'm one of the virtual CFOs at Summit CPA Group. I'll be facilitating today's session. So a couple of housekeeping items. You will get one CPE credit from today's session, and you do have to attend the entire session to answer all three of the polling questions. If we don't make exceptions on the polling questions, you can always turn this in as a self-study course if you don't meet the polling questions. For those people who do, we're going to email out the CPE certificates for it. There's a question function in the GoToWebinar, so if you would please use that. I'll be monitoring that during the session. We'll try to answer some of those within the questions. Some of those we'll bring up live. The ones that we don't get to, we're going to go over to the CFO community and try to answer those in the webinar and see if we can get some discussion going then. In the last session we had some really good questions, and it really, I think, helped people ask sort of really specific things about what they wanted. We tried to get to those. And then finally, by tomorrow, we'll send out a replay of this video and an email of all the slides that you'll have. So let's get to know who the speakers are. Jake Grimm is one of our speakers. Jake is the Director of Technology at Summit CPA Group. At one time, he was a full-time virtual CFO and still has CFO clients. And now he is really helping us implement data visualization tools within Summit CPA Group. Adam Hale co-founded Summit CPA Group back in 2004. He's currently the Chief Operating Officer of the firm, and similar to Jake, also does CFO responsibility as a part of his role. And Adam's really been the visionary and kind of direction setter around how we use data visualization tools. And then Justin Hatch started out in the small business world, starting his first company when he was 21 years old, worked for a larger company as VP of Business Development for 10 years, opened their US operations, helped took them to the NASDAQ exchange. He's now the CEO of Reach Reporting, which he's founded back in 2015. So welcome to all the speakers. Adam, I'll turn it over to you and we'll ask the first polling question after you go through what we're going to cover.
Yeah, so we're going to start off just kind of talking about why it's important to have a data visualization tool. I think we're kind of all on the same page that we need something, but there's a couple different reasons. We'll kind of walk through our history with it, let you know kind of what our timeline's been looking like. And then we're going to deep dive into, how to evaluate a good visualization tool in order to find the right fit, and then how to get started. And if we have a little bit of time left over, we'll do a little show and tell with what we've done with some of the tools, specifically with Reach Reporting and how we're helping to serve our clients with the data. So
sounds great. So the first polling question really kind of gets to getting to know our audience a little bit and what people are currently using. So I'll give you just a little bit of time to do this, and then we'll share the results from that one.
I really liked the trivia before the thing set in. So everybody that's just hopped in late, you missed out. It's kind of like going to the movie theater. Kelly, our marketing director, had some really cool did you know stuff up there.
I really like that. There's a lot of informative stuff on there.
Yeah. The FBI one, that's actually the reason why I got into an accounting. It's an FBI agent came like freshman year of high school and was telling us about how they preferred accounting degrees over law enforcement degrees. And I was just like, criminal justice or whatever. I was like, oh, that's cool.
That is cool. Okay, we're gonna keep the polling question open for about another 10 or 15 seconds.
Looks like we almost got everybody.
Yeah, so if you're still thinking,
remember, click that button if you need that CPE.
make your answer quickly. Okay, we're gonna close it in 5 seconds. Okay, so I'll quickly share the results. And I'm not sure if you can see that. We see third party, like Reach Reporting, is 55%, followed closely by Excel at 45%. Yeah. Not currently or others sitting at about 23%.
Yeah, and I know, especially with the third-party tools, there's kind of varying degrees, and we can kind of talk about that because I know some of them are integral to some of the accounting software people are using. So, how that all fits. Really, we'll dive into why we moved away from some of that stuff and are now with Reach as well, which brings us to our exciting Summit CPA timeline. So this is just kind of the steps. We thought it was important just to kind of take a step back and let you know, this is relatively new to us as well. It's been something at the forefront of our firm for a really long time, but this is the way we kind of talk about it. So from 2002 to 2010, we call that the dark ages. That's where we were using the paper and the binders. I don't know, everybody probably remembers the 2-hole punch, and you had the little spiky things. I think we still have, I don't know, we could probably go to the scrapyard with all those things that we have left somewhere in an office. And then I remember thinking how cool it was whenever we upped our game and we got that clear plastic sheet. We made some really cool cover sheets, and first day on the job showing people like how to use our binder the proper way so you don't mess up the sheets and don't have to reprint everything. Getting thick paper. Yeah, it was all about the touch and feel. But in those days we were in front of the client, so it felt weird to say, hey, did you get that email or whatever.
Right.
Not the case these days. It's not like everybody's running around with a tablet. So those were the dark ages for us. And then right around the same time that we were becoming more virtual, so we were not going out to clients all the time. We were becoming distributed internally. We were also getting a lot more opportunities with clients outside of a real close footprint where you could sit down and hand them something conference room. We got a key employee came along that understood VBA coding, which just revolutionized what we were doing. And that was kind of the industrial revolution for us. We were being able to just crank out a ton of stuff. I remember whenever he came aboard, he's like, I spend more time correcting dates and headers and footers and why one page has it shrunk down to 60% to fit onto one page and the other page is at 110%. This looks miserable. So that was a big step for us, like just taking that part of the review process out. Because I would say whenever we would bleed red, most of that was formatting issues. And so we were able to solve a lot of that with Excel, with automation inside of Excel through macros and just the VBA coding. We were able to do some really slick and cool things. The problem was the maintenance. So we had some really good Excel folks that could do the VBA coding, but whenever that stuff would break, it was just treacherous to kind of work through. Plus the data was getting bigger and bigger and bigger that we were pulling from. And so we needed somewhere else to kind of house that. And that's what really propelled us. And from 2017 all the way to 2019, that's what we were doing. We were coming up with ways to aggregate this data into a large database, trying to figure out the best way to project it. So we were doing lots of searches right at the beginning. We were looking at, Tableau, Fathom, Excel BI, you name it, we looked at it. We couldn't, and there was just different layers of complexity for us, and it was problematic. I mean, there's so many options out there. We wanted the flexibility of like a Periscope data, but you had to have like computer programmers on staff in order to be able to get that to work. We really liked the look and touch of like a Fathom, and I know Fathom has transformed a little bit, but the problem was it wasn't as customized as we want. It's some really, like, we use the word cute a lot around here, like it has to look cute. They had some really cute reports. They just weren't super functional for us. I wasn't sure how I would use it to tell the story. And so that was problematic for us. But regardless, what we did, and we ended up settling on a tool called Clipfolio, what we thought was going to be kind of in the middle for us during that time. Unfortunately, it didn't provide, and we knew this, it didn't provide the flexibility that we would ultimately need or want out of the product. So that's why we made the shift. It was actually probably like late 20, we've been working for a while on it. So it was probably in that 2019 area. But for us, this next stage for automation is where we're leveraging reach reporting. And that's why we have Justin on the call with us today. So he can kind of explain, he's really good at explaining more of the why and how to use the data. So we wanted him to be a part of this as well. But the flexibility, I would say, of reach reporting is what we were longing for in the other products. But I, of all people, am not a developer, don't want to be one. I need something that I can just kind of toggle on and off. It gave us the flexibility and the customization. Jake will kind of walk through a lot of that stuff whenever we get to that area too. For
Adam,
things to
we
look
do
at.
have one question, maybe this is for Jake. Chris asked, did we look at Jirav? Jirav? Is that a tool that we looked at?
We did not.
Yeah,
No. Oh, you did?
a little bit. I did, yeah, a little bit.
Oh, okay.
Jody and I met them at a speaking engagement last summer at the LA finance, accounting and finance show, and just saw their booth and stopped and talked to him. I think actually the CEO was there, and kind of talked to him a little bit about his platform, and did a little bit of a quick demo with it. And it just wasn't, for us, it just wasn't quite where we needed it to be. One of the biggest things was the usability for not only me, but for my team,
Okay,
to be able to get in and create custom stuff. But yeah, we did look at them.
Good. Thank you.
Well, whenever he says me and my team, what he really means is his team, because Jake's a superstar. I mean, we definitely are lucky to have him. A lot
I
of
can
firms
second
don't have
that.
somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jake is phenomenal to work with.
Yeah, so I mean, having somebody that can manage that data, but you got to think of the weakest link. So it's easy. The reason why I probably didn't know is because they knew I was the weakest link, so they don't even, bother with me whenever it comes to that stuff. So, so yeah, that's that was kind of the big thing. So the reason why we're all here, though, and need data visualization is, 93% of all communication is nonverbal. So even whenever I talk, I'm usually moving my hands. You don't see me, but I'm all over the place down here. So nonverbal communication is key. And so having a good data visualization tool is going to be important, especially as the communication between our clients has evolved and changed. Like I said, we're not sitting across the table from them. So we have to really come up with better ways to tell the story. Which brings us kind of to the knowledge pyramid here. And I'm going to kick this over to you, Justin, because I think you articulate, kind of the how this all works a little bit better.
This is a fun little gem. I mean, it's interesting as accountants, we're really effectively storytellers. It doesn't matter who we're telling the story to, if it's the SEC, if it's the IRS, if it's our clients, and then there's a full spectrum of what our clients look like. But our job is to disseminate a message, and that is to make it we're to make absolutely sure that message it hits home, it resonates. And if it doesn't, then in some ways we failed at our jobs. And so where the knowledge pyramid is really, really interesting is in a lot of the way we typically present information. Ultimately the best way to tell about the knowledge pyramid, or if you ever look it up on the web, it's the DIKW pyramid. And what's interesting about this and the best way to tell it is through an anecdote. And that is, if I'm your navigator and I'm sitting beside you in the car and we're in a city that we've never been in before, and I'm trying to tell you that there's a stoplight up ahead, that we are quickly and rapidly approaching a stoplight, and that it's red. If I were to tell you on the data level, I would tell you the GPS coordinates of that stoplight. I would tell you the IP address of the stoplight. I would tell you the binary on/off of each of the lights. All of this, and I may tell you the atomic time and when that's going to. And if you can understand that, that's amazing. That's amazing amount of information, and it's really, really helpful. But for most of us, what's he saying?
I said that's Jake.
That's Jake. Yeah. Right. But for most of us, that's just it's too much. It's not absorbable, especially in a short period of time. We have to make a decision now. And so you go up to the information level, and the information level is really cool. And I think a lot of the world lives in the information level. We try to get out of the data level. The data level is actually really interesting too, because the data levels can be split into raw data and visualized data. I didn't throw that on here, but it's visualized data. It seems like we're providing powerful metrics, but all it is visualized data. It's not really intelligible unless you really know what it's saying. The information level is an interesting level because it's saying on the corner of 5th and Main, there is a red light. And so that is really powerful information, yes, but that assumes that I know where 5th and Main is. That assumes that I know exactly where I am relative to 5th and Main. And I mean, listen with our accounting ears, right? Because these are our clients all over the place. They don't always know where they're at. I mean, they may be looking at the P&L saying, oh, everything's hunky-dory, but they haven't looked at the cash flow statement in who knows how long, and they're bleeding to death, and they don't know it. And so they may be on this information level. We may tell them, yeah, there's this a stoplight ahead, but they don't have any relativity or context. And that's where the knowledge level comes in. And the knowledge level is awesome. The knowledge level says there's a red light ahead. And what that's done is that's summed up everything. I know I'm traveling in a direction. I know that I'm accelerating towards something or going at a velocity towards something, and that there's a red light ahead, and that I'm going to need to deal with that right now. So the knowledge pyramid has established one thing in particular, and that is context. Now I know where I am relative to this thing. And again, with our accounting ears, we listen and we say, okay, what are some areas where we could provide information that's on the knowledge level? Now, the wisdom level, this is a tricky one, and this is it's tricky for a number of reasons, but the biggest one is in the anecdote, the wisdom level says depressed breaks now. It makes the decision. And that's really tricky for us as accountants, because there's some liability there. We're assuming that we know all of the facts because we've seen the financials. There's a lot of things that factor into that. But the wisdom level is a very powerful level to get to, and often the wisdom level can be derived in conversation, in discussion with the client, or with in the anecdote, the driver. Because they know what's happening around them. They know the actual scenario, the actual situation. But if we can kind of come back and we can say, let's figure out a way to really operate, to really live in the knowledge level, then we have succeeded as accountants. Information and knowledge. The problem is often we're in the visualized data level, and when we're in the low information level, but we really need to step it up. And ultimately, my mission, my objective is to create a solution that enables us to provide that kind of information, but information that resonates with the client. The beauty of how Reach works and how it exists comes into the delivery of knowledge to enable the people to have context, to have understanding, and the accountant is absolutely critical in that deliverable.
Yeah, and I would even argue that, in our advisory role, the wisdom, depending upon the relationship that you have with the client, obviously, but if we're all on the same page and we're living in the knowledge zone, it's the next natural step, if you're in that advisory role, to have the wisdom as well. Like, we're not afraid to give our clients advice because we have the information, turned into knowledge, and we're kind of all on the same page. It's whenever it's just, you've been to advisors and you ask them a question, they're like, well, it depends. I mean, it could be this and it could be that. If you're actually, living out the VCFO services and have a really good understanding of your client, I think it's natural just to be like, hey, if it were me, this is the way I'd go, and this is why. Everybody's on the same page. It's easy to make that decision. So these tools are, really imperative to do that.
Yeah, the relationship really is critical in there to really enable those decisions to be made, the understanding to be made. What's the forecast? What's the objective? What are the goals? Once you understand those things, it's a completely different world, because now the financials, you can start pulling drivers out of the financials. You can start pulling key indicators, the indicators that are saying, hey, this is what's happening. We gotta do a pit stop here, and if we don't, we're gonna be in trouble in a hurry. And that kind of listening is really, really valuable, regardless of what tool we're using, whether it's no tool or Excel or a third-party application or whatever.
Yeah, I agree. Which is why, whenever it comes back to it though, I mean, there's got to be a certain ROI here. So like 3 reasons why, just real quick, I mean, we all kind of know these things, but it does amplify your message. Pulled out some stats here, like infographics are 30 times more likely to be read than plain text. I mean, I don't know about you, but anytime I've put something in front of my client on the screen or whatever, their eyes immediately go to whatever you've put either into a graph or a chart form. Almost always, it's just it does definitely stick out. It also provides a clearer understanding, like we were talking about, turning that information into knowledge. If you've been able to architect the data the right way, it really helps make those decisions easier. And like this stat says here, it's like it can shorten business meetings by 24%. It's like it might not just shorten the meeting per se, but it also allows you to lead the different parts of the conversation. So you can get out of the financials and out of the numbers a lot faster and start talking about the business ramifications. We've definitely seen that within our meetings.
If they're shorter, I mean, that means we've gotten to the action items sooner. And it's like, okay, well, why are we talking about this? Let's go jump to it. So that's awesome. Sure. I like that one.
Yeah. And then it aids in the decision making. Like I said, you can get to the decision a lot faster. And for us, I can tell you, and Jake's going to talk through like how we vetted everything and what we needed it to be. But for us, it came down to, also what's the ROI here. And what we've found internally is we save on average about 3 hours per month per client. But whenever you take that out times 125 clients that we're working out in terms of scalability and trying to make sure that we're efficient, I mean, we're saving in cost, not even opportunity cost, we're saving about $15,000 a month just by aggregating and automating this data into a visualization tool. And that's just on our cost side. But whenever you look at these other factors in terms of, that's not factoring in IT support that we needed whenever those Excel files would break all the time. And that doesn't factor in, just all these keys right here that your clients want and need in order to help them out in their business. So when you start adding all that up, I mean, data visualization tools is just kind of a must-have. It's not a nice to have. It's definitely a must-have.
Yeah. And Adam, that leads perfectly to our second polling question. She described kind of for clients and what we've gotten out of it for Summit, but now we're interested to hear from the audience kind of why they're interested in visualization reporting. So I'll let people go ahead and start answering that, and we'll go ahead and show the results.
Yeah, this one was kind of a, I think we'll probably get a lot of all the above on this one.
Sure.
Would be my guess, because they're all pretty important. I know whenever I'm working with CPA firms, a lot of times delivery becomes, first we talk about, how do we get these clients? How do you price? What services do you deliver? Most often they kind of have an idea for the services they want to deliver. But then ultimately it leads to, a consistent delivery. It's one thing whenever you're a solo prop and you're the one delivering it, but whenever there's other people involved, and even if you are a solo prop, you don't want to reinvent the wheel all across the board for all of your, all of your different clients. So sure. It always leads to this kind of question.
Yeah. Okay, we'll give about 5 more seconds, and then we've got almost everyone has already voted. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll now. And Adam, you can go ahead and see the results. All of the above was by far the most favorable. Yeah. People are getting the message.
Surprise. Yeah. I would be interested in the other. So whoever put that down, I would be interested to see, kind of what was the biggest priority there.
Comment, on what that other is. That is interesting.
Yeah, if you answered other, if you don't mind, drop it in the question, even though it's not a specific question, and we'd love to just see what that one is.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll go ahead and take that away, and it's back to your slide.
Okay, I went ahead and set you up here, Justin, for what we're trying to get accomplished here.
Yeah, thanks. It was I love telling stories, and you guys know me, I'm a nerd when it comes to that kind of stuff. I was presenting to a board of directors at this NASDAQ company that was alluded to, and I was sitting in front of this board of guys. And on this board, I mean, there's just these phenomenal human beings. I mean, they're they're worth so much money, but their brains were also incredible. One of the guys was the former CFO of NASA. And so I'm like getting into this thing. I'm like geared up, right? And I'm thinking of every big word that I know, and I'm gonna drop those like, you know, intermittently. So these guys know how smart I am. You know, like, I mean, my ego is just like trying to protect me as much as it can. And so I get into this meeting and I'm dropping all these bombs on these guys. And it was Ronald that put his hand up, the CFO, and he just said, Justin, we just need to know what's happening and how it's happening. We don't want to have to reinterpret all this stuff. And it was like, I mean, it like hurt, but it was actually such a relief, because I was able to just talk normal. I was able to speak in normal layman's terms. These guys didn't know what rectification was. They didn't know what flame impingement was. They didn't know what all these things. And I was over this mechanical team, and we were super sophisticated in what we did. What the board wanted to know was, how can we help? What's happening? Are we doing good? Is it go? And again, listen with our accounting ears. Are we doing well? Is this department successful? Is there growth? Are we spending too much? What's our budget? You know, that's the kind of stuff they wanted to know. And what occurred to me was something that stuck with us. And I mean, we have several little mantras here in the company, but one of them is absorb complexity so that the user doesn't have to. Absorb complexity so that the next guy down the line doesn't have to. And that really was what became of this whole presentation. Is I then said, oh, okay, oh yeah, you want interpretations, you don't want data? Oh, okay. And I mean, that's where all this DIKW pyramid and all this stuff came into play, because I started to realize that we needed to provide information that had already absorbed the complexity. Because if we just pass on the complexity, we expect them to absorb it. And honestly, in a lot of ways, many of our clients, they don't know what the relationship between the three statements is. They don't know the details of the balance sheet. Some of them do. Some of them are amazing at them. Some of them really don't. And just like me, our egos are trying to protect us. So what do they say? They'll say, oh yeah, no, I'm good. Yeah, we're good. Yeah. But if we can provide an interpretation on that and turn that data into knowledge, that is critical. And that's where bridging that gap really comes in. What we're doing is we're doing an assessment. We're trying to understand, okay, where is our client? If they're CFO level, if they're really, really intelligent in the financial space, then we need to just provide them the data that they need so that they can make actionable decisions. However, if they're not, then we need to be able to take a step back, really understand, really listen to who they are, what they need, and then provide that information. Because our job, we know that gap, we see that gap. Our job is to bridge that. And so any way we can use any tools to do that, to build that, that's where we become those, we can have those strategic conversations. We become that true advisor. We can really, really enable the client to make those decisions.
Yeah, I think this is where we want to really live as VCFOs. We do want to live in that knowledge and wisdom level, and we can have those strategic conversations, and we don't have to, you know, whenever you hear advisor, I mean, you're supposed to advise. You're not supposed to always give them like 4 paths and say, I don't know, like you choose.
Heads on everything. You know?
Yeah,
well,
like, exactly.
It's like, I don't know if there's cars there.
Yeah, so if you can organize the data, and I think Jake's going to take us through some of this here in just a minute, but if you can organize the data in the right way that tells the right story, you can become the chief storyteller, and then ultimately a true advisor from the standpoint of telling them which direction to go and when, which is really important if you want to deliver that extra value that most CPA firms don't. That's what we typically hear whenever we meet with clients. It's like, yeah, they can answer my questions, but they don't really know about me, and I feel like I always have to fill them in. And then, you know, whenever I hear their advice, it's just kind of, it falls flat. So getting this in place will help you, regardless of the touch. You know, you can, even if you're just touching that client monthly, if you get the data in the right lineup, you might be able to just jump right in and go right to task, which would be great. So especially for those smaller clients. So I'll turn it over to Jake for all the exciting stuff on how we actually found the right tool and everything.
Yeah, so thanks, Adam and Justin. A lot of different data points here that were important to us as we were going through our path of taking data and getting it to our client in a digestible fashion. First point here, live data. That doesn't necessarily mean instant like revenue numbers right from QuickBooks every second, real time, but something that the client can interact with. Changing from static PDFs that were just, here's what happened last month, but having something that the client can say, okay, I see what I did last month. What did I do last quarter? What did I do this time last year? What were some of those comparisons that I can try to see, was this good? Was this bad? And so the ability with a data visualization tool to have that connected to all of your data and to be able to very quickly change like timeframes, for example, and look at that. That was one very important thing for us as we were moving out of Excel-based platforms and into an online cloud-based platform that we could very easily set up structures in place for the client to digest the information and to be able to change it to what they wanted to kind of look at.
I think that's an important point, making that distinguish between real-time data and live data, because the real-time data somewhat can, depending upon what you're projecting, you got to be very careful there, because that'll tell the wrong story. And if clients are looking at stuff and it hasn't been vetted or adjusted like we normally have to do to the data. So, but the live data does give them that touch and feel that Jake was mentioning, and they don't really. The real-time data kind of drifts a little bit. So,
Yep. The next big thing for us was the ability to have templates that we could start as a baseline to apply our reporting across all of our clients. But from those templates, we could then customize them to fit that individual client's needs. When I get into the demo a little bit here of like what we've kind of set up inside of Reach, that's one of the core things that was very important to us, was starting with our core platform that we wanted all of our CFOs to be reporting on and giving information to our clients, but to give them the flexibility to adjust that where needed. We might have a dentist we work with, and then someone else is working with a restaurant. So some of the core like financial metrics might be the same across all these different businesses, but then some of the underlying areas that are important to that business need to be reflected appropriately. That was one of the big holdups that we had when we moved to Clipfolio. Initially was we had a really rigid system. It was a great template that it worked for every single company, but it could not be adjusted at all from one client to the next. It was a take it or leave it sort of a situation. And that also kind of leads into like what I was just mentioning, the easy to use on both sides. We wanted a platform that did not require IT's help and hand holding throughout the entire process to get information to the clients. We needed something that was drag and drop, in a way that clients or our team understood it's very similar to Excel, for example. Working with tables and to put your information together, something that's very user-friendly, doesn't take any coding background or anything like that to put together reports. We give them the data, and it's very easy to put together information that is digestible to the client, gives them that visualization, that they need so that they can kind of understand what's going on. Justin had, I love his point that he mentioned earlier about having a system that can digest the data so that the user doesn't have to. I think that's really important, and really helps get your message across.
We call that Adam proofing on the easy to use.
Yes. Integration with the accounting software. So one of the big things that Adams was mentioning too from an ROI perspective is, we were looking for a solution that could minimize the amount of prep time and time that, to be honest, that could cause errors in the process. If you have human touches across different areas to get to the end result, it opens the door for, dates being wrong, formatting issues, those sort of things. So getting from the starting point to the end result as quickly as possible and as directly as possible, it was a huge importance to us. So being able to integrate for us, our core platforms are QBO, QuickBooks Desktop, and Xero are probably 90% or more of our client-based accounting softwares that we use. So making sure that it had a direct connection and ability to talk together for those. And then the last, obviously, pricing. Anything that you're vetting out from a software perspective, you obviously take into account the price. And I think this correlates back to the earlier point from Adam, ROI on that pricing. I think there's a lot of great software applications out there, but it needs to, even if it's really expensive, it needs to be able to show that it's, that ROI is going to be there for the company. So it was a no-brainer for us. For Reach, for example, because we knew that time savings and that efficiencies that we needed to scale this up quickly across the 100+ clients that we work with was very, very very important for us. So
although seeing what you guys are saving, maybe I need to go back and
there you go.
So I'll interrupt Justin now. Here's the
You're
good
supposed to have
another
like 100 to 1
question.
R something, Justin. So I think we need to reduce the price.
So Adam talked about kind of why we do this, and Jake just talked about kind of our process for pricing and setting up tools. So now we're curious in kind of what's stopping people if they think of using data visualization tools. So if you'll answer this third polling question, and I'm sure people are anxious to actually see Reach and what we're doing with it.
Yeah, I think I would have probably said all the above. So
maybe that's the difficulty people are having. Okay, so pick V1.
Yeah, pick one.
I think this does say select all that apply. I think it's just a radio button though that doesn't look like we're letting you pick more than one.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because that definitely would have been. Yeah, I guess the thing is like I said, there's so much pressure both internally and externally. I mean, just to be able to come in and have something slick, it just makes even the review process. Wouldn't you say, guys? We talked about the time putting it together that we're saving, but I think the review process going into the meeting and the prep time even went way down.
I agree totally. And when you know what you're going to present and you've agreed on something really good, then you don't spend a lot of time thinking, oh, maybe I should this month I'll show it somehow differently, because you figure out a way that tells the story well.
Yeah, and you can kind of skip around for sure.
Yep. Okay, I'll give about 10 more seconds. So if you haven't made your choice on which one you think is the top one, go ahead and do that quickly so that you can get your vote counted. Give it 5 more seconds. Okay, I'm closing it now. So it looks like time is double anything else. So time, bandwidth are really the two big ones that are in there that people are saying is what's stopping them from doing that. So Jake, I'll come back to you.
Complexity, yeah.
Oh, you're right, time and complexity, right.
On the complexity, I agree. So that all comes down to like finding an easy product. So yeah, we'll kick it back over to Jake for how to kind of get started.
Yeah, so some of the things that were that we had to work through that were important to us to get data visualization set up. Kind of goes actually the first 2 points here, analyzing and preparing your data, and the structure, which is the next thing here. They kind of go hand in hand. The biggest thing as a starting point is chart of accounts with your accounting platform. One of the biggest things for us was making sure when we're onboarding a client, we go through a process to get their chart of accounts structured in a way that's very similar across all the clients we work with, especially if they're in the same industry. If we have 10 different restaurants we work with, we try to have all the restaurant chart of accounts kind of set up the same way. If we work with dentist office, we have it set up the same way. So that's one of the most important areas of that. As we get into a data visualization platform that connects directly to the accounting software, they're using the chart of accounts to help know where the information should go. So the one easiest example that I see most often when we onboard clients is they don't have any cost of sales account set up. Everything is just going into expense, like overhead expenses. And so there's no reporting on gross profit. And that's the biggest thing that our clients have control over for the most part is their is their gross profit, figuring out how to boost that up. So if they don't have the chart of accounts structured in the correct way that's splitting up their costs between cost of sales and overhead, then we're not going to be able to report on that in our data visualization platform. So those are a couple of the biggest things. The last, from a correlation standpoint, as I kind of mentioned, if people are across different industry or clients are in the same industry, trying to draw those comparisons between all these different restaurant chains. Here's average ticket price per like size that you have or like table that you have, those sort of things that you can kind of draw correlations across. Hey, with all the other restaurants I work with, here's like an average that we see. So having that data structured in that way, it was a really important area that you have to consider from a setup standpoint. So that way you can offer some of those data points to your clients that are just outside of like your net income percent and your cash in the bank. Those sort of just like very high level financial metrics, they can kind of do anywhere. Even like your accounting software a lot of times will start doing those sort of metrics, but how can you kind of distill that information down to what's specific for their business, that the drivers that are important to them is one of the biggest things there.
So from a structure standpoint, the account numbers were also super important, right? Because most clients aren't using the account numbers. I always turned them off because I thought they were ugly, but I know bigger softwares used them and everything, but that was kind of important, whenever we were tying all this data together as well. That way people, you're not messing with name changes, things like that. I think it's also really cool that I know like QuickBooks Enterprise and stuff like that has consolidation features, but being able to structure and put your data like this, we have a lot of clients that have multiple businesses. And so even if it's not really like, for McDonald's or something like that, but it's like an operating company and a real estate holding company, we have the ability to kind of blend that stuff together and put them up. And that's really nice as well, to be able to show them more.
I would add one thing to that as well is trending. Trends have this phenomenal way of telling clients a story. It's saying, we may look at our net profit, because our eyes are drawn there, and so we get the report. When it comes, we look at it and we're like, oh, it's 32,000. It's great. But if we see the trend, that could either be a phenomenal number, an average number, or an abysmal number. And the trend tells that story instantly, so we don't have to try to really delve into it and diagnose it.
Yeah, 100%. Before we get into the takeaways, I mean, Jake, do you want to kind of do a little show and tell?
Yeah, sure.
What we have here. I'll change the presenter over to you so you can. Because I know we talked a lot about why, and I think, like I said, a lot of people feel like they got that, but sometimes this is the part getting started. If you can kind of see what things could look like, it helps you kind of get things kick-started too.
Yeah, so two important aspects for us inside of Reach reporting. We have what is dashboards, which is kind of back to that live data point, where we're breaking down information to a lot of different areas and having that interaction to be able to move different areas. So one example, we have cash to reserve, where we talk with our clients, hey, we want you to have X amount of your 12 months of revenue set aside in the bank. So we have actuals in the blue line, goal in the yellow, and we have the ability to change the goal if we need to. So based on different risk factors with the business, we might shift that goal and say, well, we need to have this amount. So this is kind of like the interaction ability from a dashboard perspective. As I mentioned, with like summarized income statements, different time frames. So the client has the ability to come in and say, okay, I see what I did prior month, and as Justin mentioned, like a trend analysis here, you can kind of see we have March, April, and May side by side. We can look at prior quarters and see what that looked like. Third quarter, fourth quarter, first quarter. Those sort of like trend analysis are important.
You just answered one of the questions we got. Someone said, do we allow clients to access Reach?
Yes, that's another cool thing about Reach, is that we can have, whoever we want. Like it's not like it's like a per company fee. And we can invite, that was important to us too, because whenever we were looking at some softwares, they wanted to charge us every time we invited one of our clients. And that was a big thing for us, because we might work with a leadership team that has 5 people on it, or they might want to say, oh, cool, could we do a department dashboard and just show everybody that's in the department? And if we're going to be sending a link to 15 different people, we didn't want to pay per user. So, that was, and just some of the things that are kind of outside of the box that, how easy it is to kind of move these things around. As you can see over to the one side, we got use of cash, and we've got taxable income. You can switch from income, those are things that we custom built. But like if you're a tax shop or doing tax planning for your clients, that is a super helpful tool, because it tells you not only where you're at year to date, but where you're going to land at the end of the year. So if you're doing tax projections and things like that, just the way you structure your data, you can kind of pull these things in and out that way. It's very helpful. And then we all know the use of cash story. Clients are like, awesome, I made $300,000. I don't have any money in my bank account. So explain to me how that worked. So this is like a really simplistic version of a cash flow, because nobody can ever read a cash flow to save their life anyway. So it just kind of shows them that, the ebbs and flows. So we do that at an executive or a high level. This is one of the dashboards. But can you drill in and show them a couple of the other, some of the other, this is the high level report.
I like the monthly report here.
Well, no, I was thinking like just how we drill down into some of the other dashboards, like the production summary, the job profitability. Those things are really important to clients as well. So whenever I was on a sales call with a client the other day, they're always, here's another reason why this is important, and this is a sample company, is we have clients that are always asking us, cool, what does that look like? What are we going to be going over? This is a real easy way for us just to put a sample company in here, and we show them, hey, this is how we look at job profitability. And then they ask them questions about that, and they're like, that's exactly what I need. Or we have a production summary one, and it just depends. We'll make these custom for whatever the client is, but they can kind of see what their production metrics look like, what their average bill rate. These are, obviously more for like a service-based business here, but you can kind of see what all those things look like, and we're able to bake that in at a department level, at a per person level, all those kind of different things. Yeah. And
one of my the dashboards that I really like, and it was built by one of our legal clients. They actually took the same KPI, they duplicated it 4 times, and they showed each one in a different way. So one was a table, one was a flipped table, and one was a bar chart with line chart, and one was a bar chart with goal line. And so it was able to tell that same story, but tell it from 4 different perspectives. So you're really looking at the same data, but you're really looking at it in a really digestible way.
Yeah, the other thing that I really like about this, and maybe you can kind of, I don't know if you can show behind the scenes on this one or not, but you can click off the stuff at the bottom, on the, so if you don't want to see one of the columns, so that if you want to emphasize something, like having that flexibility right on there is a really cool feature. And then in terms of sometimes showing things or putting things together kind of behind the scenes, everything has like a little eyeball. So like whenever we're doing, not really the graphs, but whenever we're doing charts, because I kind of like doing both. Behind the scenes, you can there's like a little eyeball in columns and in rows whenever you go to edit stuff. So if you don't want to see something, like if you have a baseline template, but it doesn't make sense to have inventory in for a service-based business, you can just click the eye off of it and it disappears. It's not off your template, it's still there, whatever, but having that ability to do that, this is where Jake was saying it can be more like Excel, because you can see you can filter stuff at the top as well, and you have that little eyeball too to turn things on and off. So the flexibility here is in the ease of use for our team was really a big win. And I would say one of the final things outside of the dashboard was the report to PDF. because that's what was really a roadblock for us as well in terms of Clipfolio. We weren't able to print that. So banks wanted a financial statement. We'd have to like go in and print it and format it and do all this other stuff. Or the client wanted a deliverable that we just maybe upload to the cloud. You know, like a lot of our clients, they'll just say, hey, can you archive that and put it into, you know, our Google Drive or something like that. Well, you went to go print the other stuff and it'd show up on 4 different pages and it'd be long and wide. So that was a key component for Reach.
Yeah, even just some of the compliance stuff. So at the very bottom here, you know, we have our like detailed income statements and balance sheets. You know, the compliance things that they might need to send to their bank in a nice, clean format. Like we could have a template that we just call bank financials that, you know, prints this stuff out. And this is, you know, completely automated. You know, whenever we're ready to close out the next month, this data will push in. The great thing with Reach, what they call statement builder, is accounts will add and remove based on like what's in your accounting platform. So if you go into your accounting platform and you add a new revenue line item, and next time you sync this, it's going to automatically pull that in the correct format that you need in your statement, and it's done. You know, you're not trying to add these rows into Excel and do those sort of things.
One of the things that I love to talk about is up above a little bit in that live text, and because I mean, we said, I mean, a huge percent was bandwidth and a huge percent was time. So I mean, effectively, you know, we had two big ones that were time. All of these little components are live text, and can you even show how they drag around? I mean, these are placed in exactly where you want them to be, and this is live text. So every time you come back into the report, that is automatically updated for you based on the parameters and dates you've specified in there to specifically create that. Now you may be saying, okay, well, what about those more sophisticated, more ratio or more customer specific stuff? And that's where this gets really interesting, is in that right there, in that custom stuff, is you can come in, you can build really sophisticated stuff based off of the square footage of the facility, the number of dental chairs that you have, the number of hygienists you have, the number of employees that you have and whatnot. And you can build these metrics, again, things that really say a story. So they tell a message, so that when those managers receive that information, that is enormously valuable to them. They not only value you more, but they're able to make more actionable decisions based off of that data that they now have.
And yeah, and we structure this in a way that we want to be able to tell that story. So, and then Jake, if you could scroll down just to kind of like our summary sheet. And we kind of got the idea here working off of, we used to use a tool called Profit Sense a lot for like industry and what we found is like a lot of our clients like the graphic right at the beginning. It had a summarized kind of view of how you were doing. So what we were able to do with this as well is this is kind of a little bit of a starting point for us, you know, with our clients. You know, we just have the yellow, red, green here. How are we doing? But they can kind of see how they're trending in those areas too. You know, as Justin mentioned earlier, you know, trends are super important. So we can have the year to date, how we're, you know, so for gross profit year to date, we've got a red X there all the way to the right-hand side, even though we're trending in a better direction in March and April. You know, so eventually we'd like to be able to see that, you know, go green. But these are, you know, and you can make those custom to whatever you wanted, whatever metric you wanted. But this kind of storytelling is really pretty powerful whenever it comes to the data visualization, just to have this up and ready to go. And then you can drill down from there.
And we have a question that Justin, I think you answered in the last one, but it was, can you add non-financial data sources? And your example was number of tables and things like that. So I think the easy answer is yes, you can. You can pull in multiple sources and even add your own data into here if you end up having to type it in, you can do that.
Yeah, if you want to key it in, you can do that. There's some functionality that's being added with Google Sheets that's really interesting. And there's lots of places where you can have that non-financial data and then hit numbers against it. And the beauty is you can build a formula in there. In that formula, you can pull that non-financial data and run it against the live financial data, and then it'll build you a ratio that will then effectively be pseudo live data, but that you can display throughout your software.
Yeah, and very related question, can you do things based on classes in QuickBooks?
Yes.
And I think the answer is yes, you can do that also. Okay.
Yeah. In the sample company, I don't have that. We don't have classes built into this, but it would come across in this little filter button here, class departments, and it would show up the different classes that you would have available to you, and you could build your reports very easily to say, okay, I want to see this by this class. You also have the ability on like the client-facing side, what's called display options, where you can turn on your class department filters, and it's kind of the same thing. If I shift back over to the production summary, even though we do have some departments in this example, but it shows up like a filter, and I don't have it in the sample, but it shows up like a filter on here that you can then select and be able to look at. So makes it live.
Where that's really nice too is for your clients, because now your clients they don't have access to all it's not the fire hose. We're giving them a water fountain, and they can then use that. They can select through it, and again have them tell that story.
Yeah, so that's let us know. I'll try to answer this one quickly and see if you have other things. So all these cool graphs, everything has Greg asking, okay, so where can we become better at identifying trends, key performance indicators, things like that? I can think of two quick sources of Profit Sense that Adam had mentioned is one that does things by industry. There's also a book that I liked, which was Simple Numbers, Straight Talk, and Big Profits by Greg Crabtree, and I can post that in the channel. So those are two, but any other, I know we're a little short on time, but any other quick things that you think of when someone's trying to say, how do I get better at sort of figuring out what I want to show people?
I think it starts with, for us, everything's kind of centered around forecasting, and that's where we really get our metrics. Because at the end of the day, what you're trying to determine, metrics should just be drivers for the business. So you're, ultimately, the biggest lag indicator is going to be your balance sheet, and you just want to keep going further down the chain. So for us, I'm looking at revenue drivers specifically most of the time for a lot of my metrics. So in Justin's example of like, how many chairs do I have? I'm trying to break down how my clients make money. Those are the metrics that I'm trying to determine. That's how I figure out what I want to do. So I learn, it's not just sales, it's what do you sell? And then how do you make money within that sale? And then you'll get the non-financial and financial metrics that you really need to come out of that conversation that drives the revenue. Hey, we missed revenue by $30,000 this month. Why? Oh, because you said that you on average charge 400 for this, and you do 19 of them. Well, you did 22, but you only averaged $100. What's the deal? Those kind of things, and that's what sparks those conversations.
Yeah, and it's probably fair to say you can learn those over time, right? Day one, when you roll out this report to your client, you don't have to be perfect. You're going to learn these as you go.
Yeah, I would say as part of the onboarding process, one of the very first things we do is like the get to know you, and the get to know you, we drive, the expense stuff is relatively easy, figuring out the direct and indirect costs, but spending a good chunk of time, like an hour of just deep diving deeper and deeper and deeper into their revenue model and how they make money and what their conversion rates are, or what drives revenue, that's really going to be the guts of what you're trying to do here.
Yeah,
from a metric standpoint.
Jake, maybe we're jumping back. I see we're a couple minutes left to the takeaways, and several people have asked about the resources. Where can I find out more about Reach? What about you guys? I know we've got that information that will come out on the slides, but we can touch on that.
Yeah, if you want to flip it back over to me, Jake.
Yeah.
In answer to the question about locations, yes, it's full access to locations as well, and locations, classes, departments.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, just key takeaways, just, I'll just brush through these so we can get to the other, the slide with the resources and everything. It really comes down to delivery, just like in real estate, location. For us, we want to make sure that we're delivering a high tech looking product. I mean, we speak about how we're tech forward and everything. We want a really slick in product, but we want to, make sure that we're super efficient with our time and we're telling the right story. So that's why delivery is so important. I think it also adds a lot of stickiness. If you have your hands around the data and you can help the clients make the decisions really fast and get more integrated with the business, I think it's going to make you, the longevity of that relationship, because they're going to then see the value. So, the value in being able to help them make those decisions. And then the other thing is I know we were talking about the roadblocks being time and complexity. It really is easy to get started. You just have to kind of flip the switch and then, leverage whomever you choose to help with your data visualization tools to kind of help take some of that complexity out of it. And you'll know if you're in too deep with some of them, because there are some when I know whenever Jake starts kind of going, I don't know, then then I already know that was kind of a no-go for us. But so you'll kind of be able to figure that out. So in terms of like offers and resources specifically, we still are offering, this is going to be the last time whenever we're offering free access into the Slack community. So we've got a 3-month free access into the community. It's only as good as the people in there, so don't be shy, ask lots of questions, share a lot of information. I've seen a lot of good conversations. I've seen things spin out from it. So just, keep up the good work and don't be afraid to just ask a lot of questions. We also have a discount on my partner's book, 25% off of his book. It's really our playbook. So he walks chapter through chapter. It's a great book, great read. Obviously I'm biased, but he really kind of does a great job of really giving the playbook of how we get things dialed in. So definitely recommend that. And then finally, Justin's been very generous with our the people in our community, which is amazing because this stuff can be a little bit expensive. I think that whenever you look at the ROI, I mean, it in cost, I don't think was a huge deal for everybody, but again, he's been very generous. Normally it's about $149 per client, but per month. But he's willing to offer that to everybody in here for $50 a month per client. That's not like moonlight pricing either. He's, like I said, he's been very generous with us as far as that's concerned.
Good price.
Yeah, feel free to go to that link.
Go to
Take you right into that pricing and into a page specifically for this webinar. But yeah, certainly check it out and use that as much as you need.
And I think I can speak just from my COO perspective. My job's really just kind of oversee our directors and just kind of make sure things are going smooth. And we've had a lot of hiccups and a lot of slow going throughout that progression of our timeline. And I can say, Reach has been really like always hitting our timelines and staying ahead of things. And anytime we've asked for stuff or help, Jake's always said, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Jake, but it's always felt like a pretty smooth process and like we've got a lot of support, which is great. Which we didn't have sometimes with the other products. It was like we had to go get offshore developers and stuff like that.
So the final slide, I think, is contact information that people will have in case they want to get in touch with us or the 3 speakers in there. And then, of course, the CFO community. We've got the webinar channel. There's a couple questions we didn't get to that we will make sure we get to, and then we can continue the conversation. Because as you think about this and then come back and say, hey, what about this? Have you thought about these things? We'd love to see that kind of conversation there. And the sharing helps us learn and will help people get educated around this as much as we can.
Yeah, good. Absolutely.
Good. Well, thanks to all of our speakers. As I had mentioned, if you did the polling questions, you will get the CPE certificate via mail, and by tomorrow you'll get a copy of this recording and also a copy of the slides. So like this contact information, everything else that's in there, we'll have that. Great. Justin, Adam, Jake, thank you very much for today. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.